I originally played Shantae Half-Genie Hero back in 2018 when the game was on Game Pass. At the time, it was probably one of my favorite games that I discovered on my own. The story was great, the art was vibrant and colorful, and it was the first game in the Shantae franchise that I had ever played. At one point, it was the rarest full completion I had on the Xbox One, and that was only for obtaining the original 1000 gamer score. So I thought a quick completion, since I'm trying to get my achievement percentage up, would be all of the DLC for Shantae. Surprisingly, it was probably one of the worst gaming experiences I have ever had. Welcome back to Socks and Sandals, and today we are doing an achievement hunt horrors in the Shantae Half-Genie Hero DLC. There are 3 DLC packs: the costume set, the Friends to the End DLC, and the Pirate Queen's Quest DLC. There's also a title update for the game that added hardcore mode. I decided to start my foray into this DLC deluge with the costume pack, just because I thought it was going to be the least amount of new content. So the costume pack contains 3 different costumes that Shantae will wear, and it changes the gameplay. It changes it moderately to slightly. The costumes included are an officer costume, a ninja costume, and Shantae's bikini. The 3 different costumes are used in officer mode, ninja mode, and beach mode, and I decided to start my playthrough of the costume DLC with the officer mode, which is by far the easiest mode to complete. So with this mode, Shantae assumes the role of some sort of police officer, and apparently it's like a reference to the game Super Switch Force, which I've never played. I guess that's a game on the Switch. I haven't the slightest idea on that, but when I first started playing this, I did not enjoy it in the slightest. Unfortunately, I ended up clearing officer mode, as well as I did have footage of this, but the capture device that I use, for whatever reason, it corrupted them. So you're just watching my second playthrough of this. I was following a guide, so I think my first playthrough of it, I got the 100%, and my second playthrough, I went for the speed run as well as the 100% speed run. So in each mode, as well as base game Shantae, there are 4 different ending screens, and you gain an achievement, at least in the DLC, for obtaining all 4 ending screens. And those screens are gained by completing the game for the first time, completing the game with 100%, completing the game in the fastest time, and completing the game in the fastest time while also obtaining 100%. When I started this, I tried to follow the guide to a T. Anytime I died or took damage, I reverted to an old save. Because the way the power-ups work, so if you've played base game Shantae, you have the ability to use magic, and you have a magic meter. Well, in the costume DLC modes, you have to collect gems, and there are 4 levels, and most of the time you would like to be maxed out at level 4. But the moment you take damage, it immediately knocks you down to the previous level. If you continue to take damage, you can even drop down to just level 1. A majority of the time, you have to do a damn near perfect run without taking damage, and that's not typically how I play games. I absolutely cannot stand rushing. I prefer to take my time. I can think more clearly and make fewer mistakes when I'm not being rushed. But due to me having to do a speed run, I didn't really have that option. So the third part to Tasseltown just before the Wilbur boss fight was really the first thing that gave me any trouble within the officer mode playthrough. Struggled with not taking damage from any of the archers, and oftentimes would make a simple mistake of being standing in front of a block and just flinging myself at the screen. Within the airship itself was also a bit of a challenge. Again, just not taking damage from any of the enemies and making sure not to die by flinging yourself at the screen or jumping into the lasers. But eventually, I finally do make it to the end of the game. So there are 6 boss battles in the game. So there are 6 different stages for the game. The final 2 stages, the Hypno Baron's Castle and Risky Boots Lair, are only 3 levels as opposed to the other ones where it's 4. Risky Boots Lair is actually not too bad in this mode. Really, the only thing that gives trouble are the Tinkerbat enemies. As far as like traversing the level, it wasn't anything too hard. The other 2 modes proved to be much more difficult once it actually came to Risky Boots Lair. We finally do make it through Risky Boots Lair and make it to the Risky Boots boss battle. So the bosses are kind of trivialized as long as you have the blaster at max level, because you can kind of just spam X and it just does, like, each of the blaster things, because it shoots in a cone of 3, each of the blaster things, when they come in contact with the enemy, will just, like, annihilate their health bar. Once we defeat Risky Boots, the final little thing is surviving the slide, which I don't actually think you can die on this section. Once we then skip past all of the credits and get to the playtime, so it looks like my first playthrough was the 100% speed run, as well as just beating the game, and then the 100%. So it looks like I obtained 3 win screens on my first playthrough. So my second playthrough, all I had to do was just play through the game. So I was able to beat the game a second time with a time of 42 minutes and 40 seconds, collecting 16% of the collectibles, unlocking my final win screen and the final achievement for the Officer Mode DLC. I then decided to start the Ninja Mode, and in my opinion, this is probably the hardest mode as far as the Costume Pack DLC goes. It took me some getting used to the actual traversal. So with Ninja Mode, your magic ability is to throw shurikens, but you also have the ability to ninja vanish. You can vanish through objects as well as enemies. You also have the ability to stick to walls. It seemed to me that the way to do it was, so you stick to the wall by holding any direction and jumping at the wall, and as long as you're holding the direction against the wall, you will stick to it. So my instinctive reaction to get off of the wall is to push away from it. But once you do that, Shantae will just fall off the wall. So I struggled a lot, and there's a point in particular later on in the Ninja Mode playthrough where you're inside of Ammo Baron's ship. I kind of had to force myself to learn the proper way to do the wall climb, I guess. Once I actually got used to playing in the Ninja Mode, the only level that really, so the first level that actually gave me some trouble while in Ninja Mode is the second part to the Mermaid Falls while you're in the factory. It was just, again, I was following a guide and I was trying to play it perfectly like the maker of the guide, and they would play through entire sections of the game without taking any damage. So quite often I would have to pause and restart. So there's a section here in the factory where I was also struggling with the wall climb. So the way the guide maker did it was there's a section here where you first come to like the open space of the factory, and you've got all of these hook rails just going all over the place. What the guide maker did was jump against the wall, jump out, and then ninja teleport through the platform above him. I was very rarely successful in pulling that maneuver off. So what I opted to do was to just jump to one of the hooks for the rails and then jump up to the platform. That was the way I got by that. So instead of doing an initial playthrough, so I learned real quick that the costume modes were basically base Half-Genie Hero, just without visiting the town and upgrading Shantae. It was just the levels, but with a slight twist with each different costume. So there really wasn't any story to experience. So I opted to, instead of doing an initial playthrough, I opted to just try and get all 4 windscreens within one playthrough. The video guide, and I attempted to do so to a T, though it probably is what frustrated me the most is, again, like I said, that is not the way I play games. I do not like rushing through shit. It's just kind of what I had to do to obtain all of the achievements. But eventually I do make it through the factory. But we continue playing through ninja mode, and we get again to the third part of Tasseltown. I thought officer mode Tasseltown was difficult. Tasseltown in ninja mode is 3 times more difficult, and this stage alone is probably why I think ninja mode is probably the most difficult out of the 3 costume modes. I struggled for quite a while on Tasseltown. And I think it was at this point that I decided that enough was enough. I'm nowhere near as good as the guide maker. So if I took damage or maybe fell, as long as I am still on par time with getting the speedrun achievements, both of them, then I don't care if maybe I fall off the map or take damage. I will just have to play that much more better to at least try and get gems to max my shuriken ability up again, or just get good enough to beat the boss at a level 3. The perfect strat in succeeding in the Half-Genie Hero speedruns is to play through the level. If you're following a guide, get the collectibles, and you know, if you're playing perfectly, when you exit out, save, but copy your save, and that way when you get through the next level, if, say, your run of the next level is not as good, or you're not on time to succeed in the speed run, you reload your previous save. So you always want to have at least 2 copies of any levels saved. That way when you get through the next level, if it's not as good, or maybe what I would often do is reach a boss and not be able to beat it because I didn't have enough gems for the ability, I would go back to a previous save and just do it better. Really, the rest of the game wasn't too much until we get inside of Ammo Baron's ship. The section here that gave me the most trouble, trying to get to one of the dream squids in the level where you have to do a wall jump and teleport through a platform that is above this area. And I could not, for the life of me, get the wall jump down. I kept bumping my head, or again, I would instinctively push away from the wall to jump. The proper way to do the ninja wall jump is to just hit A and she will art away from the wall. But that is really the only reason that this level was frustrating, because again, you're trying to do it in a timely manner, and to spend, let's say, 15 additional seconds on a section like that, and to still not be able to get to the dream squid you need to, you then have to restart the level, and then you like make dumb mistakes like maybe not ninja vanishing at the right time so you get blasted by lasers, or say the jump doesn't work so you fall into a pit, stuff like that. So that's what really bothered me about the inside of the ship. But as far as actual difficulty, the ninja mode doesn't get difficult again until the final section where you're trying to get through Risky Boots' castle. So within Risky Boots' castle, or Risky Boots' lair, there's a section where you have to grab onto hooks, and it seemed like the guide maker was able to just ninja vanish straight to a hook. I did not seem to be able to do that. I struggled with the positioning of ninja vanish. Quite frequently, I would try to do the ninja vanish and jump too far and land in the lava, or there are spike traps within the level. Unfortunately, my actual run of this was corrupted. I basically just replayed the level. I did far better in my actual run, but yeah, it was quite a difficult thing. And from what I've learned is that the final level of Shantae games love to fucking just give you a gauntlet at the end to try and test your ability. But once you actually make it to Risky Boots, she's not really that difficult in the ninja mode. Again, I just kind of gave up on doing it perfectly without taking damage, so a lot of her hits I would just kind of tank. Unfortunately, in the costume modes, you only have 3 hearts. Risky Boots will sometimes drop hearts, but as far as actual difficulty for the boss fight, she wasn't anything. And we finally get to the first... So the first achievement that I was able to actually get footage of is Ninja Vanish. And that was obtained for using the teleport ability 100 times. I think I got this fairly on in the playthrough, because using the teleport ability is how you traverse through the stages in ninja mode. So it wasn't that difficult to do that. But once we actually beat Risky Boots, I then unlock, rather belatedly, surprisingly, I thought maybe it was glitched, but I finally beat Risky Boots and unlocked Revenge of Shantae, which is to obtain all windscreens in ninja mode, as well as Shinobi Shantae for completing the game in ninja mode. Yeah, after getting all 4 windscreens, I kind of sat on the title screen for a bit, and they're supposed to unlock once you view the final windscreen, but they didn't pop until moments later while I was sitting on the title screen. I'm glad. I was actually just about to stop recording, and I'm glad I didn't, because I would have missed the capture of them. Next up, I then moved on to the final costume, which is the beach mode, which to me, it's not the easiest, but it definitely isn't as hard as the ninja mode. If I had known ninja mode would have been so difficult, I probably would have done beach mode second. Unfortunately, another achievement was missed because it didn't pop when it should have. Next up, I unlocked Costume Party. It didn't unlock until I was playing a different game. I had completely forgotten it was an achievement until it popped while I was playing Sniper Ghost Warrior 3. You obtain Costume Party by completing a level wearing every costume. So after I beat the first level in beach mode, I should have unlocked that, but it didn't pop. So a majority of the Shantae DLC achievements are extremely delayed. I don't know what the issue with it is, but the only costume pack that actually worked like it should have, and it may have been because I obtained all 4 windscreens at once, and it just wasn't able to keep track, but there's no reason why Costume Party should have been as delayed as it was. In fact, I think the only reason that it actually popped on screen is because at the same time it popped, I had unlocked another achievement in Sniper Ghost Warrior 3. That definitely didn't help my opinion of the Shantae DLCs, the fact that the achievements were delayed, but I digress. So the shtick of this mode is that Shantae forgot her sunscreen on her way to the beach. She's wearing her bikini, and she is not properly equipped to handle the violent rays of the sun. Within each level, as well as within boss fights, there is a meter at the bottom left-hand side of the screen. Once it fills up, Shantae succumbs to a sunburn, and if Shantae does not pick up a bottle of sunscreen in time, your health gradually ticks down until there's none of it left. Again, I followed a guide for this. Watching the guide, they show you the optimal route to gain a bottle of sunscreen, as well as get the collectibles, defeat enemies, and this, that, and the third in order to do it within the allotted time limit. I don't believe I had any real issues with the beach mode until I got to the Tassel Towers sequence. So within this sequence, not only are you being rushed by the time limit in order to gain a proper time, but Wilbur is crawling up from the bottom of the screen. So getting through this in beach mode was probably the most difficult of the 3. It was certainly no cakewalk in the other 2 costume modes, but while also doing this and trying to obtain all of the dream squids, it proved to be quite the challenge, as well as making sure you don't get a sunburn. I do not know how Shantae is getting sunburned while inside of a building, but who knows? It is in the desert. The desert air could be blowing through holes and such, and maybe it's not a sunburn as much as it is wind burn. It does not excuse the section where you are again inside of Ammo Baron's ship. However, because you are completely indoors, there should be no reason why she gets a sunburn. And again, the section where you're having to get to the Dream Squid at the top through a platform is damn near impossible in beach mode. I struggled to get to this damn Dream Squid 4 hours. So you have to utilize Shantae's bubble, because I haven't mentioned it before. The bubble is a flight ability, and what it does is when you jump in the air, you hit Y to activate the bubble, and Shantae will gradually float to the top of the screen until the bubble pops. You can preemptively pop the bubble by hitting A to gain a slight boost in height, or you can hit Y again and Shantae will just drop out of the bubble. The issue with this section in particular is the hole is so small that if your bubble touches either side of the walls of the hole, it pops. I would also frequently cause Shantae to hit her head on the sides of the hole, and it was just really difficult to get through the hole without failing. And again, you're fighting the sunburn as well as you are against the clock. So I tried and retried that section so many times that it wasn't even funny. I absolutely hated that part. But other than that, Again, the game doesn't really get hard again until when you're going through Risky Boots' lair. You do have the ability in this section to just kind of float over everything with the bubble, so that's beneficial. This being the third playthrough, I really didn't care if I took damage. I would just keep going. I felt as long as I was level 3 when I made it to Risky Boots, I would be able to beat her. As long as I didn't lose too many gems by the time I made it to Risky Boots, I was fine. As long as I had a decent time as well. But eventually we do beat Risky Boots, and again I obtain all 4 windscreens at once. These were delayed as also. They actually pop while I'm attempting what should have been the last achievement for the costume pack, which is SPF 250, and that's to collect 250 bottles of sunscreen. I did this by just going to the first level and then standing on the first bottle of sunscreen that appears. You collect the bottle, and after a short period of time the bottle reappears, and as long as you're standing directly on it, you will collect the bottle of sunscreen. So I just stood there, and eventually all 3 achievements of the Beach Mode DLC popped at once, unlocking me Fun in the Sun for completing the game in Beach Mode, the Perfect Tan for obtaining all windscreens in Beach Mode, and SPF 250 for collecting 250 bottles of sunscreen. The Costume Pack DLC is probably the biggest scam for this game. Yeah, they added slightly different variations of the gameplay, but not at any point was I having fun playing these costume DLCs. I saved the beach mode for last because I did not think that they could make it actually challenging. I figured you would just play through the game while Shantae wore a bikini. So I figured it would have been at least eye candy, but no, it was not any fun, as neither of the other 2 costume packs were. To me, I feel like this was a wasted $7.99. I would not ever pay money for this content pack again. But after completing the costume DLC, I then moved on to the Friends to the End. This DLC, it takes place during the story. So at the end of base Half-Genie Hero, after constructing the dynamo, Shantae is blasted with an excessive amount of dark energy, turned into Nega Shantae. So the Friends to the End DLC takes place in the span of her turning into Nega Shantae and when she reverts back. So you're basically playing as her 3 friends, Roddy Tops, Sky, and Bolo, and you're transported into her mind and you're trying to revert Shantae back into good Shantae. Roddy has the ability to throw her head, and wherever her head lands, as long as it's a platform that she can be on, she will teleport to her head. Sky has the ability to throw eggs as well as spawn wrench as a platform to get to different locations. And Bolo, probably the most useless character in the whole thing, just because his ability does not work half of the time, has the ability to grapple to hooks only either straight vertically or at a diagonal. There is no horizontal grapple, and that's probably why his ability fucking sucks, because it doesn't register half of the time. But the first achievement we actually earned within the Friends to the End DLC is That's Using Your Head, which is to defeat 10 enemies with Roddy's head throw in Friends to the End. So by the time I had earned this, I felt like I had defeated more than 10 enemies, but I think you have to defeat 10 enemies without dying. If you die, it resets your counter. I basically just killed 10 easy enemies. I believe the bats and the Tinker Bats are an insta-kill with Roddy's head. After that, I unlocked Deja Vu, which is to relive a past event in Friends to the End. This is obtained by beating the first boss of Friends to the End, which is Risky Boots. So this one also is kind of a scam. Again, you do have the different abilities of the 3 characters, but you are basically playing through Shantae again. And after having done it already 3 times, probably about 6 if I count my initial playthrough of Shantae, with it being the exact same story again, just you're playing as different characters, I was extremely disappointed. I made the mistake of doing this DLC thinking that I would just do an initial playthrough, experience the story, and then do another playthrough, getting the speedrun, 100% speedrun, and just the base 100% completion. That was a big mistake on my part, and I wasted a playthrough doing this because this added nothing. I did get the 100% on this initial playthrough. I was still following a guide. I really shouldn't have even bothered because I was going to have to do that all again anyway. So, lesson learned on my part. After obtaining Deja Vu, I then got probably the hardest achievement in this game, which is Learn to Fly. Keep one of Sky's attack birds in flight for a full 60 seconds in Friends to the End. So, Sky's main mode of attack is throwing a seagull out. And when you throw the seagull out, it loops back and just comes back into you. What this achievement requires you to do is to throw the seagull out and then avoid the seagull for 60 seconds. I struggled with this for a while. Yeah, this was just not fun, and I hate the developers for doing this. All of the other character-specific achievements were like, yeah, sure, but you are not even playing the damn game. You are standing in one spot, avoiding a fucking bird for a minute straight, and it definitely took me longer than a minute to do this. So, I absolutely despise Way Forward for this single achievement. When I looked this up on True Achievements, I guess one of the developers actually posted a comment and said that they initially had it at 45 seconds, but a vast majority of the playtesters were able to obtain it within the 45 seconds. So they deemed it too easy and upped it to 60 seconds. And I just... Why? Why? They said that each of the 3 achievements associated with the characters, Roddy Tops is something that players were more than likely going to obtain just playing the game. The Bolo achievement, which I'll get to later, would not be obtained as easily as Roddy Tops, but was still something that maybe players were going to trigger on accident. They deemed Sky's achievement as something that only achievement hunters would go out of their way to do. And they're right. Nobody in their right mind would do that because it sucks. But after obtaining Learn to Fly, we then obtain Bolo's achievement, which is Half-Wit Hero for defeating 20 enemies with Bolo's grapple attack in Friends to the End. I tried doing this on the bat enemies, but because you have to be either directly below the bat or directly diagonal to the bat, and again, you have to do it without dying. Anytime you die, it resets your counter. I saved this for the Ammo Baron fight. Bolo's attack will not instantly kill the enemies that surround Ammo Baron, but it will at least kill them within 2 to 3 hits. I still struggled with it a bit because, again, with the diagonal and straight up, you have to either be directly below the enemies or directly diagonal to them. And being that close to the enemy, you quite frequently take damage, and it was just a war of attrition to see who I could kill first before Bolo himself died. And again, Bolo fucking sucks. His attack only does 2 damage. So it was just frustrating. But I was able to do it.
Shantae Half-Genie Hero.
And this next achievement I completely forgot was even an achievement by itself. Kid Squids, which is to collect all Dream Squids in Friends to the End. I don't think there's anything too drastically difficult within Friends to the End. There's nothing that comes to mind that I struggled significantly with. The final area where you do obtain the final Dream Squids, I think Bolo's, to me, is the most challenging, just because his ability fucking sucks. And quite frequently I would go to hook to something and he just would not respond and would just fall off the screen. A lot of the people on True Achievements said that Skies was hard, but as long, like, when you play through it and you learn the positions you need to throw the birds, once you learn that, it's just a matter of timing and skill. I didn't struggle with hers as much as I did with Bolo's, just because it seemed like a mechanical issue with the game, and that Bolo's thing would not attach to shit properly. But, like I said, I obtained the final Dream Squid within this final section before fighting Nega Shantae. I'd completely forgotten it was even an achievement, so when it popped, I was unprepared. After obtaining the final Dream Squid, I then fought Nega Shantae, which really wasn't that hard. I would use Roddy Tops' ability because when she's in the head animation, she will not take damage. Instead, she will deal damage. So if you are about to take damage, especially during the Nega Shantae fight, there are times where she will transform into a crab or a harpy, and if you time it right just before her attacks hit you, you can throw Roddy Tops' head and you might be able to get a few good hits, but the main reason for doing that was so that you didn't take any damage. But after beating Nega Shantae, I unlocked Friends to the End, which is to save an ally with the power of friendship in Friends to the End. Unfortunately, because I decided at the beginning of this playthrough of this DLC that I would experience it first and then go back through, I had to fucking play this piece of shit a second time. And it was that. Again, it was not fun playing this DLC. Sky and Roddy Tops' abilities were cool. I just really wished that it was different. It wasn't the same levels. Granted, the final gauntlet where Nega Shantae separates the three and they each have a little challenge thing to get through, that was different and actually a welcome surprise, even though they were probably the most difficult levels in the game. Because it was something different, that was probably the most enjoyment I had in the game, even though it was uber frustrating. But I did go back through and obtained the other 2 windscreens I needed, which is the 100% speedrun as well as the normal speedrun, unlocking me true friends. So, for the final actual DLC, we then move on to Pirate Queen's Quest. This one was probably the closest to Shantae Half-Genie Hero, as you had the ability to upgrade Risky Boots' weapons as well as her personally. You are still playing through the same levels and beating the same bosses. Could not give it a pass. Like, all of the DLC for this game just seemed like shameless cash grabs. Yeah, you got to play as 3 of Shantae's friends and Friends to the End, and then in this one, You actually get to play as Risky. Once you actually obtain all of Risky's abilities and level her up enough, she's basically unstoppable, but I still don't think it was enough. You fight literally the same fucking bosses. The first boss fight is against Risky Boots in the Tinker Slug, and you fight the Tinker Slug as playing as Risky. Like, what? Why? Why didn't they at least make different bosses? They try to explain it like Risky is punishing the Tinkerbats for attacking the town without her go-ahead, and that's just ridiculous. At least the final boss, you're fighting Shantae, but again, I'm getting ahead of myself. The first achievement I actually obtained in the Pirate Queen's Quest is a perfect heist for collecting your first component in Pirate Queen's Quest. Risky is... So, this DLC takes place after Shantae is turned into Nega Shantae, and Risky is obtaining pieces to alter the dynamo. Each boss you beat gives you a component for her dynamo. There really wasn't anything too difficult as playing with Risky. Unlike the costume mode and the Friends to the End, you have the ability to heal. You're picking up fruit and stuff in the levels, so taking damage really isn't as big of a deal in Pirate Queen's Quest as it was in the other DLC packs I've played up to this point. So the next achievement I actually got was Absolute Power for collecting all Genie Crystals in Pirate Queen's Quest. Again, I was following a guide to do the speedrun as well as the 100% speedrun, so this one just came with me following the guide. So the crystals are how you discover the final area. I think it's the Genie Realm. Again, I skipped through all of the DLC, but once you obtain the last Genie Crystal, you unlock the final area of the game, which is just Risky Boots' hideout. You still have to go through it for whatever reason. This achievement was also delayed. When I got the 15th crystal, it should have popped immediately, but it didn't. So I backed out and waited on the title screen a bit, and it finally popped. I then got the Pirate's Curse, which is to collect all dark magic in the Pirate Queen's Quest. Again, following the guide. The dark magic is how you upgrade Risky. So you are able to purchase upgrades using the dark magic, much like Shantae was able to purchase upgrades using gems, but they are less abundant than gems. But when following the guide, it was fairly simple. And when I looked this up on True Achievements, people recommended doing a playthrough and 100% playthrough as your first run, and then doing a second full playthrough, obtaining the 100% speedrun, and then like a 75% playthrough, like reloading an old save and just skipping all collectibles. I said nuts to that and just did everything in the one playthrough, because there are speedrunning videos on YouTube that you can watch to do that. So it was very much possible. I think the cutoff point for the speed run is 1 hour and 30, and I did it in 1 hour and 22 minutes. And I did not play this perfectly. I died quite frequently. So, and there are definitely sections where, as opposed to restarting from my save, I just went for it. So it is very much possible to obtain all 4 win screens, which is what I did next. So once you defeat Shantae, not only will you unlock Risky's Revenge, which is to defeat that half-genie brat in Pirate Queen's Quest. There's then a cutscene where Risky completes her dynamo, but the Tinkerbats goofed it up and it just explodes. But once that cutscene plays out and you skip through all the credits, you will then unlock Risky Revolution, which is to obtain all win screens of Pirate Queen's Quest. Like I said, this is probably the best DLC out of the 3, but not by much. It does give you more of base Half-Genie Hero gameplay in that you get upgrades and there are better collectibles to get in the level that require you to, as they call this style of game, a gated exploration. You have to earn certain abilities in order to go back and obtain certain collectibles. But other than that, it's the same bosses, it's the same levels, just you're playing as a different character. I don't know if this is the first time you get to play as Risky Boots. I haven't played any of the other Shantae games, so I don't know. But yeah, I guess it was a fine DLC. I think if the developers had only released this, my experience with the game probably would have been better, but at this point, I was really tired of Shantae. And much to my chagrin, I still had to play through Half-Genie Hero one more time, only this time on hardcore. And I am actually glad I saved the hardcore playthrough for last, because it renewed my love for the base Half-Genie Hero. All of these DLCs were pieces of shit, but after playing the game on hardcore, even though it was harder, I realized why I liked this game in the first place. It was something unexpected on Game Pass, and I just happened to play it. And there's a reason why I actually went for the base 1000 gamer score. It was good. The base Half-Genie Hero has a lot of charm. It has a lot of effort put into it with gaining your missions from people in town. It didn't just seem so hand-fisted as all of the DLC. And the story, albeit kind of a little silly, the reason you're going to these places was made much better in this game as opposed to the DLC where it was just... I think it's like Boson is the developer of this. Just seemed that they wanted to make money. As far as the hardcore mode playthrough, you start off with only 2 hearts, and all of the enemies do extra damage. They take more hits. Even upgrading Shantae's hair whip, it doesn't do as much damage as necessary to defeat a lot of the enemies in a decent amount of hits before they can deal damage to you. But after playing especially the costume mode, this mode is a cakewalk. There was no point in this game where it was as hard as, say, ninja mode. I think the only section that gave me trouble in this mode was the Tasseltown Tower. Just because stuff does so much damage to you, it's very difficult to make it to the top without dying. Granted, you do have the ability to heal, but they also increase the speed of Wilbur. So you've got to be like perfect in this section. That was really the most difficult section of the game, is just this one. Just because Wilbur was faster, and fuck them for doing that. Like, not only do they make it to where you take more damage, but they had to make Wilbur faster. And again, I didn't really struggle again until the very end of the game with the final boss fight. After playing the 3 DLC modes, I had completely forgot that the final boss fight is like a 3-stage boss fight. You fight Risky Boots, which on hardcore took me a good 10 minutes just to beat her. You then fight the Dynamo for the first time, and I had completely forgotten about the 3rd fight within the Genie realm. And if you die at any point past Risky Boots, you revert to the save before Risky Boots and have to do all 3 all over again. Which really, again, isn't that much. By this point, I had the full revive dance, and what I would do is just use the full revive until I almost ran out of magic, and then use a mega potion to refill both health and magic, and then just rinse and repeat need be. But yeah, it was really just more irritating than it was actually difficult, because I had plenty of healing items. I had found plenty of heart containers. I think my hardcore mode, I think I cleared it with a 76%. So I didn't get everything, but I at least wanted to get enough heart containers to where I didn't die in like 3 hits. Yeah, once I beat the Dynamo within the Genie Realm, I then did the slide, which again, I don't think you can die during, so it's just kind of a whatever. I don't know if in hardcore mode they add more gaps in the bridge. I don't know if it's just different within the DLCs, but there are definitely more gaps in the bridge in this section than there are in the 6 other playthroughs I did in the various modes and DLCs. But I don't know if that's just because I haven't played base Half-Genie Hero in a while, or if it was actually made that way for the hardcore mode playthrough. But after rescuing Sequin Land again, we are then granted with the final cutscene of the game, and once you skip past all of the credits, I get to sit on the start screen again until finally my hardcore mode achievement pops, called Old School Baby, which is granted for completing the game on hardcore mode. My hardcore mode playthrough took me 5.5 hours, and I completed it with 77%. And with that, I have the full 1800 of Shantae Half-Genie Hero. After completing the costume mode DLC, I was prepared to shun off all Shantae games. I was loathing playing this game. Granted, I had already started it, and the whole reason I even did this was not only to increase my achievement percentage, and because I wanted to play the DLC because I thought it would be enjoyable, but because I thought it would be something quick that I can do after my previous game for the difficulty challenge. This set of achievements for Shantae Half-Genie Hero took me about a month. So it certainly was not quick. After playing the game on hardcore mode and actually experiencing what I think the game should have been, I don't think there should have been any DLC for this. Like I said, maybe Pirate Queen's Quest, but the other modes added nothing to the game. After playing Half-Genie Hero and my love for just the way the game I think was supposed to be, I think I might go for other Shantae games in the future. I definitely don't want to do it now because, like I said, I've spent a month on this game. So with that being said, the Shantae Half-Genie Hero full completion is not worth it in my eyes. None of the DLCs add anything new to the game. You basically get the most enjoyment you're going to have out of the game just for playing Shantae Half-Genie Hero. Maybe go for the hardcore mode if you think the game was too easy, which is the whole reason that the developers even added a hardcore mode, is because people thought it was too easy. And then I guess they took it personally when making the other DLCs because the costume modes were hard for difficulty's sake, and then they just didn't add anything new to the game. But yeah, if you want to play Shantae Half-Genie Hero, I highly recommend the base game. It's really fun, it's cute, it's an overall good time to play. But as far as the DLCs, yeah, steer clear as much as possible. I hear that with the Ultimate Edition, they kind of made things a little easier. The speedrun times aren't as stringent, but when I played the game, I played just the normal Half-Genie Hero that was on Game Pass. And with me trying to get my percentage, there was no reason for me to buy the Ultimate Edition and just add a whole separate game to it. So I just bought the DLC for the basic Half-Genie Hero. If you guys enjoyed the video, consider subscribing, leaving a like. I do other achievement hunting videos such as this one, but I also do collection videos. I really love video games, so I have a pretty decent collection, but sometimes I will film my video game pickups. But I also do playthroughs. We're actually about to finish up A Hat in Time. I believe next week's video is going to be the final video for A Hat in Time. After that, I intend to start Alan Wake 2. So if that's something you want to check out, consider subscribing so you can see when that gets uploaded. If you've played Half-Genie Hero or any of the Shantae games, leave them in the comments down below. Do you have all 1800 gamer score of Shantae Half-Genie Hero? Other than that, check back next time for whatever I do. Bye-bye.